Episode 15, the second part of this story of When Johnny Comes Marching Home. So, hello there, and you'll remember we saw in the last episode that Gilmore had created at least the words of the famous song, and he said that he had heard a tune that must have attracted him for its characteristic beat and rhythm. Of course, at this stage, Gilmore was in New Orleans and in the middle of a recaptured city and state where pro Confederacy feelings, according to himself, ran especially high. Naturally, both the children and people generally would be used to picking up all tunes with a good beat and even singing just a few bars over and over again, as they do even today. We're now going to explore what that tune could have been and why it was an easy surrogate for this future hit, When Johnny Comes Marching Home. So, you're so welcome again today, and I hope if you have any comments, please post them below, and obviously click like and subscribe to receive notifications of future episodes. Later also, I will be posting links of wonderful versions of When Johnny Comes Marching Home and other songs at the end of this episode. I don't want to post them to this episode directly, as I may have copyright difficulties at least, but these are all on YouTube, so they're easily accessible to you all. Also, by the way, I have compiled a list in the P S Gilmore video favorites, which you can also find on YouTube, which all pertain to the Gilmore story and its history. It's highly likely that the song that impressed Gilmore so much was indeed Johnny Fill Up the Bowl, which was also known as For Bales, For Bales. This song was a Confederate ballad, which was indeed a tune ready for the sweet words as composed by Gilmore. He would create a tune that, as far as he was concerned, would mention neither victor nor vanquished, neither cause nor result, but, and this is very important, it would concentrate on the final common message that we would all be glad when Johnny comes marching home. And unusually, and we sometimes forget this, for a war song or a song about war, it never, ever mentions wars or battles. The song had an immediate effect on first hearing that feet and hands started tapping and clapping, and suddenly we're all infected with its rhythm. And it spread across the country and sold as a piano score with a chorus included like wildfire. And whereas the original For Bales didn't relate to the Northern Union sympathizer universally, each one of these families up north had relation and knew of men affected by the war. And everyone wanted their boys to come home safely. As I stated in previous episodes, music and specifically his compositions were primarily to be spread and shared as a gift to give out, as he would term it, the divine word of music. They were never part of a desire to gain money from their publication. Indeed, Gilmore seemed to almost shun the idea of profiting from a skill that was a gift from God, he believed, and so he never claimed or gained from the publication of his music, including When Johnny Comes Marching Home. The gain was primarily by the United States government at the time, specifically in the recruitment of personnel at this specific time of the war when men were so badly needed. And indeed, we will see that the gain would continue through future wars and future governments in the next 160 years. And so the end of 1864 arrived. So now we come to the re-election campaign of a very, very unpopular sitting president, Abraham Lincoln, who had a number of problems to solve, such as the war had originally expected to be just a short war. Now it was in its fourth year. General Sherman was stuck outside Atlanta and didn't seem able to take the city. There didn't seem to be a victory in sight, and some difficulty in even picking who the victor could be. And many Northerners didn't actually like the Emancipation Proclamation. And so we see various calls being made for a negotiated settlement for the end of the war. Johnny Comes Marching Home enters the Lincoln campaign as part of the songs and ballads played before meetings to discuss his renomination. An example of this was shown, or is shown here now, from Vicksburg Methodist Church in November 1864, entitled, "In honor of the re-election of Abraham Lincoln and the glorious Union victory." Vicksburg, Mississippi, was a decisive battle only 18 months before, resulting in a Union victory which had affected the Confederacy greatly. From December in Idaho, the words of the song were printed, declaring that this song supplants both Dixie and John Brown's Body in popularity. But as cracks appeared in the campaign, such as this advertisement stating, "If Abraham Lincoln is re-elected, Johnny will never come marching home. He may even have to be carried, a corpse." And then there was another ballad to the air of Johnny Comes Marching Home called "The Refuge of Oppression," about the following March the 4th election date and what indeed would happen to President Lincoln. May 1865 arrived, and the Grand Review in Washington over 2 days took place. It was a surreal occasion, with the city dressed in mourning for an assassinated president, but yet a country celebrated as old Abe was laid to rest, and now as soldiers returned home to headlines of "When Johnny Comes Marching Home." And so that should have really finished the importance of the ballad forever with the end of the war. After all, Gilmore rarely played it as part of his thousands and thousands of programs after the war, and indeed for the next 27 years till his death. But people liked it, they sang it, and they played it on their pianos, and all bands played it. Of course, when the Grand Army of the Republic, also known as the GAR, or simply GAR, had their reunions of veterans for years and years after the war, the song was continuously taken out, rehearsed, and played over and over again, as we see here. Amazingly, the song started to become so popular in theatres and opera houses in Sydney and Melbourne, Australia, or in Sheffield, Liverpool, and London in England, or indeed Glasgow and Edinburgh in Scotland. And it was formed by various groups as diverse as the minstrel groups of brass bands, but people loved it. Now, however, I must temporarily return to the accusation of plagiarism by the musical collector I referred to in the first part of this story, Francis O'Neill, and his accusations against P S Gilmore. You see, my problem with that accusation is that if one was guilty of such an act as this, surely you'd never want to perform that song where it would be recognized and draw attention to yourself, especially by those who could recognize either air. Well, that happened when P S Gilmore brought his band later on tour of Europe 13 years later in 1878. And he wrote an autograph for some lovely lady shown here, with a few bars on that autograph being the intro of the soldier's song to Johnny Comes Marching Home. He was looking forward to this trip. Then, early in the tour, he played the song during a number of concerts in the Dublin Winter Palace, now called the National Concert Hall in Dublin. There were 6 packed concerts seen by well over 25,000 people. Reviews were written by the Freeman's Journal newspaper that the beat is infectious. But there was not one accusation of any link with Johnny I Hardly Knew Ye, or of any similarity with the other tune. Later in England, also, he played the song during his 65 concerts, where Johnny I Hardly Knew You was indeed very popular, especially amongst the Irish immigrant populations, and again, no accusation was ever made by any of the press there. In fact, there is little doubt that O'Neill had some other reason for the scurrilous accusation against Gilmore, without proof. But maybe cheap publicity could be the reason. But from O'Neill's perspective, at least Gilmore was now dead and unable to answer the charge, as he would have certainly done if he were alive to hear this lie. And so now I must also include some examples of When Johnny Comes Marching Home from YouTube, as I promised. The first one I'd love you to listen to is When Johnny Comes Marching Home. Just type that in, followed by Dolly Parton. This is an absolutely wonderful version from my listening to it. It's a wonderful version by a wonderful lady, dedicated in this case to the soldiers recovering in Walter Reed Hospital. Gilmore would have especially appreciated the empathy and emotion of Dolly's delivery for those injured in the service of their country. And Dolly delivers it with the style that Gilmore would have wished for all that acted in the service of the United States. The second version that I'd love you to listen to is again When Johnny Comes Marching Home, and then type in West Point Band. This is a marvelous military version of this old song, done with the precision that you would expect from such a beautifully trained and rehearsed band. And about 3/4 way through the performance, there's even a lovely story that emphasizes the importance of music in the Civil War to those in camps. Next week, we'll look at the 20th century history of the song, and indeed its importance to America and its military. So, please click like and subscribe, and thank you so much for your attention.